What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
We are doing a deep dive analysis into client stories, which then gives you all the answers, all those questions about marketing, and also is one of the ultimate sales tools. The customer stories have to answer all the questions. You know, do you understand my problems? Have you helped someone else like me with those problems? So case stories help you find the foot in the door, and then you have case stories of the foot in the door working. So case stories present you as the expert.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ian Garlic. If you want to check out videocasestory.com or testimonialbook.com, I actually had Ian on the podcast before, and people have heard me talk about him. One of the crazy things, I always love listening to that episode, Ian, because it gets my creative juices flowing, and because we talked about having live dolphins in a restaurant. And so people can, if you want to know what I'm talking about, you go back and listen to the other episode. But before I formally introduce Ian, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. I had one with Dan Cushell. We were just talking about Dan, and he really had some health issues, like major health issues. They landed him in the hospital from the stress of running a business, et cetera. He's built up multiple seven-figure businesses, and he talks about that. Jason Swank actually was on twice. I think, Ian, this is your second appearance, so now you're matching Jason.
Great. Jason had more. Yeah, I'm back behind Ed O'Keefe and Dan Cushell
and Perry Marshall.
And Perry Marshall.
Jason Swank, 2 episodes. One, how he built up his agency to 8 figures and sold it, and the other one, how he'd been buying up agencies, and obviously he runs the agency group, Agency 360. Another really good one is our friend Todd Taskey. And he talks about, he helps match private equity with agencies, and he has the Second Bite podcast. So Second Bite, because when the agency sells private equity and the private equity sells again, sometimes agency owners make more on the second bite than they do on the first, right? And so he's really educated me on what a potential sale could look like. It doesn't mean walking away and sitting on the beach, but you just keep doing what you're doing under a larger entity, right? You're about to say something.
Every time I hear Todd Taskey's name, I think of Bill Brasky from Saturday Night Live. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
You got to insert that here. So it's like an ongoing skit
I'll
about
have to take a look.
The greatest salesperson, Bill Brasky. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay, we'll put a link in the show notes. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, of course. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast, and we do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. Ian knows this. We're kind of like magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can develop amazing relationships, amazing content, and just focus actually on running their company. For me,
John reminds me of a magic elf.
I could see him dressing up as one, actually. The number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I have found really no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. Sometimes that means multiple times on the podcast, like Ian. But I'm going to formally introduce Ian. If you're looking at the video, he's got a really cool studio setup. With the Ian Garlic Studio or the Garlic Studio emblem in the background. But Ian is a top video marketing and content expert. He's, has some of the top marketers and service professionals as clients over the years. He is a force to be reckoned with in marketing. I don't just mean that in marketing, but he also stands at 6'7". So if you can't tell from the video, he is large. I'm not doing him justice really, because he did help pioneer a lot in the video marketing agency space. He's been doing this for, who knows, over 15 years, from large hotel chains and medical offices to small businesses, even to NFL Hall of Famers. And he really helps companies tell their story and get more clients through producing video case stories, right? We're going to talk about really the no selling sales system. He also has a podcast, of course. He's had people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Ryan Dice, Neil Patel, many more. Ian, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy's been on like 10 times on my podcast.
I don't think so. I think once, actually.
No.
The no selling sales system. So just start off before we launch into that. Talk about video case story and what you do.
So video case story, people, you need customers, you need your client stories. It's the most important thing. And I boiled it. I didn't start there, but we started with YouTube marketing and, 17 years ago, really started with YouTube marketing. And then we started the agency. We did a lot of other stuff, and we do the core, what I call the core 4 videos. We help people land their dream clients through YouTube and become the authority by the time someone walks through the door. But what we found was the customer stories were not only one of the most powerful things, but when you do great stories and you interview the clients and do a process, you find out other things like what is your foot in the door, how to sell it, what are their real problems. So it's more than just producing video case stories for YouTube. We are doing a deep dive analysis into client stories, which then gives you all the answers, all those questions about marketing, and also is one of the ultimate sales tools. And that's actually where I got my start, was using video case stories and a tool that became what we call the case story tackle box. I kept all my case stories in one place. I'd go to a sales meeting and I'd be ready with a bunch of stories. And then I'd follow up with them with the videos of those stories. And that process is what we do. It's transformed. I've sold millions and millions of dollars of agency services, helped people grow 7- and 8-figure businesses on the back of it. But it all starts with the video case story. And that's why we're called videocasestory.com now.
Core 4 videos. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So there's about 10 types of videos you can make. Everyone's big on shorts, micro content. You can make video blog posts, which a lot of people make, those rambling, talking video blog posts. You can make, video case stories, which is a big one. Obviously, that's one of the core 4. Your video FAQs in your business, another one of the core 4. Your about us and your process video. Those answer all of the core questions when someone is about to purchase services like yours. So those are if you focus, I have clients, I just got an email from a client the other day who we had a VIP strategic shoot for him 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we shot the videos. He's been using them for 10 years on YouTube and landing $100,000 clients. He's like, I think it's about time for us to make new ones. That's how powerful they are. And a lot of people want to go start with those video blog, those influencer type blog posts. I think, like a YouTube show, like interview style, definitely a great, powerful video, but you need the core 4 videos to convert the people. And if you start there, then you can move out to make the other types of stuff.
You talk about in the tackle box, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You have a book. Well, if you go to testimonialbook.com, so it's not shocking that there's a big fish on there. If you're watching the video here, I know you were holding it up too. Video testimonials that land the big fish, and then collect, craft, and deliver video case stories that will explode sales traffic and make you love your business even more. What I love about books is people pour their heart and soul into it, and they spend a lot of time on it, really crafting it. And I listened to your book, obviously, and you can get a lot of knowledge from people who wrote a book. It's crazy. What's one of the favorite parts in the book for you?
My stories about you.
I don't remember them.
I don't, I think the book, it tells you exactly the process to do what we do. It wasn't this, like glorified sales letter. Now, has our process evolved since I wrote the book? Yes. But my favorite part is, just are the stories in it of the people that we helped, and the stories of the ways that you can use video case stories throughout your sales and marketing. We'll talk about sales today, but they just can be used everywhere if you have great stories. And I think that's my favorite part, just like all the ways that you can use it. That Swiss Army story, the Swiss Army knife, that's all I always love, is that one thing that could do everything. And that's what these are. Now, are they a silver bullet? No, you have to use them in a bunch of places, but when you do that, you're going to win.
Let's talk about what places people can actually use them, and just correct me if I'm wrong, because we can walk through it. But if we look at the process, let's just zoom out for a second.
Yep.
For leads, like getting leads in the door, like inbound, right? That's one we'll talk about. Then that leads to a discovery call. How do people use? We'll talk about how people can use it in discovery call. That leads to a foot in the door, right? And you'll talk about the difference between strategic and a product service. And then that leads to a project, which could lead to an ongoing service if you have one, right? So these pieces.
Yeah.
Let's start with, and let me know if I missed anything. I want to start with the leads part and like how people use it. But I know you have there's 12 ways people can use case stories. So whichever way you want to go, if you want to start with just how do people use it to get leads in the door to start.
And I want to back up a little.
Yeah.
Because, if you use them to write, there's a difference between testimonials and case stories. So if someone's like, I've got testimonials won't work for any of this. Someone saying how great you are is not going to work for this.
Yeah. Let me show your site here. It's just your tagline here.
Is testimonial stink. It's because you've got to listen to your customer stories. The customer stories have to answer all the questions. Do you understand my problems? Have you helped someone else like me with those problems? How does this work? How long will it take? What can I expect for results? And will this work for me? These are all questions that are in people's heads that video case stories can overcome. And you have to do different varieties. We have to have different hooks, different angles. I talk about all that in the book. And there, I don't think we'll get to all the places, but there's over a dozen places throughout your sales process alone that you can use case stories. And if you go to videocasestory.com/rise, I'm going to send you a list of, all the ways that you can add 10 more sales in the next 90 days using case stories. I don't know if we'll get to all of them today, because it'll be like 4 hours of it. But
we'll link up videocasestory.com/rise, where I know you have a kind of a foot in the door worksheet, and then how you get those 10 more sales. But so out of the 12, what's one or two? Like, just give an example.
I think, the most powerful places that you can use it in the sales process is once someone raises their hand. So, we can get a lead generation in a second, but most people are not marketing to their prospects. This is a big problem, because you get the lead and you're like, this is a crappy lead. And I'm like, yeah, it's a crappy lead because they know nothing about you, right? You do all this lead generation, and then you expect when you get on a call that they know everything, or you can explain in an hour. But case stories pre-discovery call, you should be using cold to warm case stories. Dot & Co does that before they get on discovery calls, and they're a fractional account manager, management company. Taylor's awesome. She's been on your podcast, I think. Link to that. But they use it pre-call. People come in sold. They're one of our clients. I know Solutions 8 use case stories throughout their retargeting. It was their number one retargeting video. So this is in people that are in the funnel, right? They're retargeting to them so that when they come on, they're pre-sold. And those are two of the ways that I use them. And then what I always do, that's why it's important to have a tackle box. I will go before I get on, do some research about the person, hopefully have some information about what their problems are. And if I don't, I'll do this after the discovery call and go through all of our stories. So when I hop on the next call, I'll start dropping stories and go, hey, your leads kind of suck, or hey, you're getting commoditized. Case stories can help prevent commoditization when they're combined with the foot in the door. And so this is very meta. So I'm doing that, and then I'm sending the video about the case stories? Well, going through the tackle box process and listening to your stories of the problems actually helped me to develop my foot in the door. Because my foot in the door has had like 20 different iterations and moved from a strategic, or went from a product-based foot in the door into a strategic foot in the door because of case stories. Listening to the stories actually improved my sales process. And so it becomes meta, right? But if you're using them throughout the sales process, and then, in between you're using them, but one of the best things, the fastest ways I think people can start closing more business with case stories is using them in follow-up, right? A great way to do is regularly collect your case stories and go, hey, it's been 3 months. Here's someone just like you that started 3 months ago. Look at their results. Do you want to wait another 3 months or another year, right? That's going to get someone's attention instead of going, hey, just following up, seeing how you're doing. It's like, oh, all right.
Yeah, sending something that's valuable. So I could see when you're talking about in the leads category, 2 examples you gave. One was you could use them for retargeting. 2, you can actually reach out proactively, or if they reach out to you, just send it as a nurture sequence. And then we get to the discovery call, right? So now they're on with a team member. How should people use it in that part of the process?
They should be dropping the names, dropping the stories throughout the discovery call. Like, oh, you have that problem? You know what? Jeremy was giving away his strategy, right? He was just giving it away. He spent 2-3 hours on strategy calls, free strategy calls, and then there are 3 hours on proposals until we used the case story process to find his foot in the door, and he started to sell a strategic offer. I'm going to send you that story later, right? You just weave that in, but you have to prepare ahead of time, and you have to know them. Because one of the things I did early on is I'd have all these stories, and I'd be like ready with all these stories, and then I'd try and cram all the stories in. But if you have a bunch of stories, or like at the end, oh, I forgot the story I got to tell you. But if you have a tackle box, and the reason I call it tackle box is because you have the hooks and angles and all your stories in one place, you're landing a big fish, you should have one place. So if you review that pre-discovery call, it's top of mind. And then during the discovery call, you talk about it. And after the discovery call, you send over the videos.
I want to point something out. It also helps train staff. So if you're bringing on a new staff to sell, if you have you helped us, of course, if you go to rise25.com/case studies, we have them on there, and that helps train our team to share them.
Yep. Yeah. And Jason Swank, we talked about, he brought on a salesperson, had him working within 60 days. You can train them on that. And actually, Jeremy, I look back, and the case stories arose out of me selling agency consultative marketing, right? Services almost 20 years ago, when no one knew what SEO was, right? Before there was, probably 6 people had podcasts back then. And I'd go in and be like, oh, SEO, blah, 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 website, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're going to do to optimize your website. And people were like, right, they had no idea what's going on. So I learned from the best. The top 2 or 3 people were selling a story. I watched them. They collected the stories and they used them. And the other thing that I saw them do was sell something small first, a foot in the door. Now, I've evolved that a lot since then, over 20 years. And my foot in the doors had literally probably 50 different evolutions over that time. But those are all ways that case stories, I've used them. And that's why I help other people with them.
So we go from the leads part to then discovery part to sell something small, foot in the door. How can people use it in the foot in the door? And maybe explain a little bit of what you mean by that if someone's not familiar.
Yeah. So I just got on a call with someone who had seen my stories. Now, I obviously have a book, so there's a little more authority, but they watched all of our YouTube videos. They saw me on a podcast, and they picked up the book, read it, booked an appointment, and they wanted everything. But I'm like, hey, let's stop. Let's get the strategy down first. Right. And I told stories of why the strategy was so important. and I don't remember which stories I told, but I sent over some stories afterwards. But that's a foot in the door because I sold strategy first, but it's an offer. It's a strategic offer. It is, I'm not selling it like, hey, you need to buy strategy. I built out an offer. And the case stories helped me find that offer, find out what problems I needed to solve first, what problems I could get big wins with. Because at first I was selling just case stories, just the videos themselves. And when we moved over to this case story method, and I realized I was selling a product, I wasn't selling a full solution, a full
So
offer.
you, before, like the before and after, before you get on the call and be like, hey, we can do, your core 4 videos, we can do 10, case stories. And now you're like, we need to set up a whole strategy around how do we structure it so it meets your business needs and what you need to do first. Is that right?
I don't even talk about our services before a discovery call. And in this case, the person knew that they want a video on YouTube, right? Because they saw me talking about that. But I just talk about results, the case story results. And I go, to get there, we need to do X, Y, and Z. These are the problems we need to solve with yours, right? You don't have differentiators. We're going to find those in your case story process. You have testimonials. You don't know what's different about you. You don't have stories that are going to shine. And then when we do other content, you need to differentiate yourself too, right? So you don't look like, this was an attorney, you don't look like everyone. And it's like, yeah. Well, then we're going to do that through the case story process. We're going to listen to your clients and hear what they have to say. And then on top of it, we're going to have videos done, and we're going to build out a strategy. So first you convert more, then you attract more, and then you get more, just general authority out there. Like, okay, now our offer is a little different than that, but that's how we develop the case story process. I don't talk about our services ahead of time, because if you talk about service, you can say you do that, but let's talk about what your real problems are. Because when you talk about just those services, you pigeonhole yourself into that. Like we've talked before, like if you go back to the beginning of the podcast when Jeremy's talking about what he does, the podcast was at the end. The podcast is the tool to help you connect with your clients, your Dream 100, stay top of mind, give them, attract them, all that stuff. That's the difference in selling that. And that's the difference with the foot in the door, is because you're like, hey, the first step to doing this is this.
So we have leads, going to the discovery, going to the foot in the door. And then after the foot in the door, you lay out the strategy. And then the next step would be for you to do it, whether it's a project or ongoing. How can people use the case stories going from the foot in the door to actually the project or ongoing?
So up until now, we're using cold to warm. So cold is problem aware, warm is solution aware. Maybe the solution being, YouTube with us, or I need customer stories. And then now hot is provider aware. Why are we better? Why are we the best? And so we do a different version of those case stories, talking about, hey, we've got, we really dive deep. We've been doing this for 20 years. We produced over 20,000 videos. We have all these famous clients. We get results both short-term and very long-term. Our clients have gotten results for 10 years from their videos. We had, Marty, who closed Delta and Nikon from his videos because of us, and he talks about why we're great. We send those over, right? So now it's really those and there. And we will use those, and I use them throughout the foot in the door too. You go, well, you need to do this, and this is why it worked for someone else. There's Gino talking about it. I'll send some of those over that are really hot, warm to hot. Now, those will be closer to testimonials. They're still stories. Additionally, once you go through the foot in the door and send over a list of all the things that you're going to do, I don't make proposals anymore. So that's why, we're going to have that foot in the door designer. That's going to save you. Literally, I did some math on it. Save you something like 40 hours a month on proposals if you're just doing one proposal a week. Think about 2,000 hours a year doing the foot in the door process, a strategic offer foot in the door process. So if you have a strategic offer, now the services are just logical. And now you have on the list of services, you have people talking about that service, not you doing that service. Those are hot case stories. And it's like, and that closes 32% more clients. And what's great about having those case stories on your proposals, especially if you're working with big clients, is you don't get to talk to 75% of the decision makers. You're talking to one person who's trying to go out and sell your services now to someone else. You have case stories on there, video case stories, and they're like, oh. And you could have multiple team members. We've been doing some case stories where it's like, we have the CMO, we have the SEO expert, we have 3 different levels of experts in the case story of people that worked with the agency. And so those go on your proposals, bam, you're rich.
I want to circle back to the foot in the door. Bam. That's it. Bam. So I like to see, thanks for kind of walking through the whole picture from the kind of the leads part to the discovery part to the foot in the door part to the project / ongoing services part. I want to circle back to the foot in the door and go a little bit deeper because I talk to a lot of people. They don't have a foot in the door. They maybe don't know what it is. And when they do know what it is, they kind of push back against it a little bit. Yep. So talk about the foot in the door. What's the objections you get, because you told us early on many years ago, you guys should do a foot in the door. And I listened. And it's probably one of the best things that we did.
And it evolved, right?
If not the best thing we did, and I would simplify, but I'll have you talk about it, but I would simplify it as like, listen, go and, really sell the strategy and the roadmap for doing this, which is very, very valuable. And for a lower price, and obviously it's a lower commitment, and we get to demonstrate in our knowledge, our expertise, and we get to deliver a crap ton of value to someone in a shorter period of time for less money. So they can see, wow, these people, we get them results, and they're like, wow, these people know what they're doing.
They feel something when they work through. And folks, if you're thinking about outbound, and if you're thinking about a podcast and you are selling to other businesses, you need to spend the $4,000 or whatever it is for Jeremy's blueprint. It's amazing. It's probably some of the best things you can do in the sales part. And I'm not just saying that because Jeremy's my friend. I'm telling you that because I see a ton of these. And the objections I get, the number one objection I get, well, the number one problem is when people sell a proposal. They're like, that didn't work. I'm like, yeah, because you gave them a proposal. It needs to be substantial. The number 2 problem I see is that people say, oh, my audience won't buy strategy, right? And here's the thing. We pay for expert strategy all the time. If you had a rare heart condition, right? My son Max just had a rare autoimmune disease. And like, you can go get your free clinic, right? You can go get your, go to your family doctor. You can go online and try and figure it out yourself. But when it comes to something really, really important, you are going to pay top dollar to figure out get this figured out as fast as possible. You need to present it in that way, that you are the expert in solving this problem. And this is the first step. And people pay, you pay thousands of dollars just to go to the heart surgeon and talk to them, right, before the surgery and make a plan for it. That is the difference, is that you have to position yourself as expert, which case stories do that. So case stories help you find the foot in the door. And then you have case stories of the foot in the door working. So case stories present you as the expert. And you need to be creating content that shows you are the expert in solving this problem. Because the podcast isn't the problem, right? Needing a podcast is just being an order taker. But Jeremy solves a problem if, like, hey, do you want more referrals? And do you want to talk to your clients easily without ever having to cold call them again? The podcast is our tool to do that. Right. That's just, and the first thing you have to do
Same
is
thing
have,
with the, the video, when we talk about the video case story. And that's why I think why you call it the no selling sales system.
it's a no selling sales system because you're not selling anything. You're taking people on a journey of understanding step by step, right? First, you analyze what the real problems are. Then you go, here's a diagnostic tool, my strategic offer that's going to take you to the next step. You're going to feel better, right? And then I'm going to run that with you so you understand everything that's happening and we really get a deep dive and we connect. And then from there, it becomes obvious that these are the next steps. And it's just a matter then of how fast you want to go. Because we close something like 80%, 85% of our foot in the doors. And and from there.
You mean
open. Yes, I do say that. I like it. I like to open new clients. Thank you for saying that. Because I think it is important. I'm not closing anyone, right? That's a big problem too. Everyone's like, I want to hire a closer. I want to hire a closer. Closers, this is a relationship that you're building, like you've talked about. You don't want someone thinking this is the end of it. Your salesperson thinking this is the end of it. No, we're opening the relationship. And I never think like I'm selling anything to anyone. I'm just helping them to the next step. And because I have a system, I know what the next step is. And it's logical for all of us. And every time it grows, you do the same thing. No one starts with a $100,000 a year podcast. They grow into it. Why? Because it's making them money and they see the path to it.
Talk about the foot in the door worksheet a little bit. I know if you go to videocasestory.com/rise, you can download it, but what are some things in it?
So the foot in the door worksheet, some of the key criteria is going to be figuring out the elements of your foot in the door. What if doing a brainstorming session? And if you have one going, is my foot in the door correct? Because a lot of times people think that they have one and there's a reason that it's not working. And I hear like you said before, I hear it all the time. It's like, I tried the foot in the door, it didn't work. Like if you go through the worksheet, ask all the questions in there, you'll find out why the foot in the door is not working for you. And also you'll find out what to do to fix it.
You said there's a common mistake with people. It's really a proposal. It's not a foot in the door. What are some other mistakes people make with the foot in the door?
Another big mistake is they're like, I'm going to go make this all awesome. And I'm going to make this big, huge package and do all the branding and blah, 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 build out the funnels and lead magnets. I'm like, that's the biggest waste of time.
It's basically, I've heard you say that's a project. It's not a foot in the door.
Well, not only that. Well, yeah, if you build a project out, that's not a foot in the door. It should be a strategic offer. It should not be a project. It should not be a product. Because the problem, I've done this before, like I said, with case stories. You sell a case story, it's not a logical step into the next aspect of it. So you might sell, Jeremy could sell podcast gear, right? I mean, it's number one thing people ask Jeremy, I'm sure, is what's the gear I need? All right. And then how do I get more viewers? He could sell both those things. It's not going to get the result, right? Or set someone on the path to results. That's a big mistake. I think, trying to brand their foot in the door and get it all ready to sell and be like, I'm going to get my foot in the door. And it's like 6 months later, it's like, oh, it's almost there, right? Not getting out in the world. When I work with someone, I just did this with an agency owner who we went through their tackle box on last Saturday, and they are testing out their foot in the door on Tuesday, right? The only reason they didn't test it out on Sunday and Monday is because they were traveling. But on Tuesday, they're testing out their foot in the door. The foot in the door is going to evolve. The foot in the door, that's a big, don't think that you're going to get it right the first time. You need to be testing it. And and don't try and make a ton of money off of it. That's another thing I hear from people is like, I'm going to charge $3,000 for this SEO audit. Audits aren't a good foot in the door because you're just causing pain. But, an SEO strategy, that's it. And finally, if it's not an offer, that is a huge, huge, huge mistake in the foot in the door or with a strategic offer. An offer, you're not just selling, you have to sell benefits and solutions to problems, not just like, hey, I'm going to create a strategy for you.
I remember when we were talking years ago when you're like, you need to do a foot in the door. I'm like, what's a foot in the door? And then I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Right. And we just went out and ours has evolved a lot, right? It started off, I'm like, listen, I don't care about the money, right? It was like, we charged like, I forgot what it was, $100 or something. We went back to the past people we've talked to and said, we're going to just try and over deliver and deliver this like whole plan for ROI for your podcast and talk with them about it and say, we're going to raise this. So if you want in at the $100, because we want feedback, right? And we are totally honest and transparent. Like, we have not done, I mean, we've done this many, many times over 10 years, but we haven't delivered it in this format before. So you have to give us feedback. We're just going to charge you $100, right? It's just almost like just showing a little bit of commitment, right? Because I don't know if people actually want it if they don't pay. So, and they value it more. So we did that. It was like one session. It's obviously grown over the course of time. And we've spent a lot of time improving the foot in the door. And now it's 3 sessions because we're like, oh, we can't cover everything we want in 1 session. Then we made it 2 sessions. And they're like, we can't cover everything we want to cover in 2 sessions. Now it's 3 sessions. And who knows by the time you listen to this, but
Yeah.
we try and leave no stone unturned when it comes to the whole strategy. So that's kind of a testament to you saying, just get it out the door, keep improving it and, iterating.
Yeah. And you dedicate yourself to it because the foot in the door sets up the rest of your relationship. When you open the foot in the door, right? When you open it, that's literally the foot in the door is opening a door. And that's what it is. And so because yours is a strategic offer, everything spills into the rest of the relationship. And yeah, you've done a great job of evolving it and talking about it. And, we've talked about it a lot and looked at what we can improve. And, and I think that's another thing. It just can't be done in a vacuum. That's why you have to listen to your customers. You have to execute, should get, we help people with it, but because it's using case stories in your foot in the door is the best in the world. And that's where, the case story tackle box has become amazing. I think one of the best foot in the doors along with yours, because it helps people. It genuinely helps people.
How do you structure your tackle box? Like, give people a little overview.
So how do I structure it? It's a relatively simple process, but it's talking about their favorite, like really analyzing who are their perfect clients to replicate and their future clients. Because we want to tell the story of this person that maybe we're not working with right now, that we want to, and do a deep dive into the story components. So we do deep dive inside of this document. And when you do that, you start to find angles. You start to find patterns. None of us, I don't know anyone that talks about their, 10 of their customers at one time. Right. Unless you can talk about the project and how it's going and like what's not going right in it, but you're not talking about what went well and who that person is and what's the similarities. So we find niches within there. We find extra services that they need that we can produce. Right. You're great at listening to your customers and going, what are they asking for? And creating that within the realm of it. And so we go through all of that and then we plan out the stories we're going to collect because so many people are like, oh, I'm just going to do a testimonial. I'm going to send a videographer out there. You're like, what? All right. You can't, this person knows nothing about your client. And you can't just use, if you had a giant court case against your business, right? And you hired an attorney and the attorney, the lead witness comes up on the stand and the attorney pulls out ChatGPT and goes, what are the top 20 questions I should ask this person? You'd be pretty pissed off. But that's what people are doing with their most valuable thing, their customer stories. And so what we do is we have this planning part. And then on the back end of it, we collect the stories and then we analyze the stories. And every time people are like, I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that about my clients. And the bigger the company, the more you need to do this, because you get further and further away from your stories. And the first story in the book, and I'm sorry to spoil it, is Walt Disney. Walt Disney would sit and watch people come in through the gates of Disney World, count how many steps they took before they threw away a piece of trash, because he once put trash cans there. He would stand in line. Walt Disney was the most famous person in the world, right? And he would stand in line at Walt Disneyland and ask people about the line, right? Because he knew this was the most important thing. So that's why we built this tackle box. And from there, obviously, we make videos, we create strategy. A lot of times I'm like, hey, you should probably do a podcast. We don't do that, but we know the best, right? You should probably do this. And I become the strategic advisor, the trusted advisor to these people because of it.
I may be attributing this quote to the wrong person, but I'm going to say it anyways. And so Brian Kurtz, who's like a good friend, colleague, mentor.
Brian's the best.
I bought, he has a great book, Over Deliver, but he, at the time, he owns the rights to Breakthrough Advertising. So I bought Breakthrough Advertising. Eugene Schwartz is the author, amazing marketer, copywriter. And I think this, you may know, but I think this is attributed to Eugene Schwartz, but he said, or someone said, copy is not written, it's assembled. And kind of what you're talking about with that is taking what people said, right? Like, which we're talking about in the form of stories, and assembling it so that it sells, right?
Exactly. Well, and also, because you can say, hey, we're the most experienced, or you can say, hey, we're the most strategic. That means nothing. But when you have the words of a client, and we had one that was like a customer service one that was, we're like, well, can you explain to us how the quality of their customer service? And he goes, watch this. And he picks up the phone and he calls the head of whatever, head of strategy. The guy picks up at one ring and it's like, hey, Bill, how can I help you? Right? That demonstrates the customer service. That is a hook. Watch this is an amazing hook, but you need that other person saying it.
Yeah, I love listening, and actually, at some point we could talk about the giants of direct response, but like some of the top copywriters in the world do this so well. They tell the stories inside the copy, and some of the best ones, they'll interview like 100 of the person's customers or clients before writing the copy.
100%. Rick Cesari's, the George Foreman grill didn't do too bad, right? And that's what Rick Cesari's method was, right? Is talking to the customers, not a focus group, interviewing the customers. One of my favorite infomercials of all time is the Blue Blockers, right? And what was
Joe
that?
Sugarman. Yeah.
Joe Sugarman. But it was, the guy doing the rap. That was a man on the street. That wasn't planned. And we're going, oh my God, I could see everything, right? It wasn't, well, the Blue Blockers have UV protection of 98% and blah, blah, blah. Right. They throw that in there for logic, but it was people's reactions to putting on the Blue Blockers for the first time. They sold, they're still selling them.
Joe's book on copywriting is one of my top 3 of all time. If anyone, it's the Adweek Copywriting Handbook. It's fantastic. I actually was able to spend some time when he came through Chicago. May he rest in peace. He gave me his book, signed it, and I devoured it. It's fantastic. There's a PI attorney. Maybe we'll give a real live example of maybe it's from lead to discovery to foot in the door to project. There was a PI attorney. If you want to walk us through that journey for a second.
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier, but it was basically he walked. He saw me on a podcast, looked at my YouTube videos, got the book, read the book, and then hopped on a call 3 days later. At that point, got a bunch of case stories, heard it all working. And 38 minutes later, because I was selling a foot in the door, and my foot in the door is expensive, but it was like, oh, I want it more. But I'm like, no, this is where we're starting. It was a no-brainer for him. Like 38 minutes of me talking to him. The only reason we talked for 38 minutes is because we hit it off and we had a great time. Because he was, you know, I hopped on with another client yesterday. Same thing, right? It's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. They're like, okay, I've been listening to listen to the podcast. I watch your videos. I knew you. So that's a part of it, but it's a no-brainer. When someone doesn't see all your stuff, it takes a little more selling with the foot in the door, but you don't have to jump through all the hoops. It's like, hey, here's the first step in this. And it's a small step, but we're going to figure all this out together. And there's a lot of ways, to sell that and create an offer. But once you get good at presenting that offer, it is super easy. And because it's just the next logical step. I did one, I did these at several trade shows. I did one for tax accountants and I closed like 10 people on there. 2 of them are still clients that have purchased, spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars with us. Right? Because I set myself up as the trusted advisor and I fulfilled on it, right? You can't set yourself up as a trusted advisor and not fulfilled on it continuously.
Right. People continue with you because they get results from it.
Yeah, but also the reason that they get results is because they trust me. I'm a trusted advisor. We have a strategy in place. They trust the strategy and it's a holistic strategy. They're not going looking 20 other places and going, well, I got a podcast from Jeremy, but the podcast over there is cheaper, right? Once someone goes through Jeremy's blueprint, they're like, oh, there's never going to be anything like this. It's not about podcasting. It's about this. Same thing with us. Once they go through the tackle box process, everyone's like, oh, I get it now. And I can make thousands of videos, but that's the experiencing it with me. And once they get it and it starts working, it's off to the races.
videocasestory.com/rise. We talked about the foot in the door worksheet. And then there's some other resources on there. Maybe touch on the 10 more sales piece.
Yeah. So we talked about this, but go into depth. I have a worksheet, how to get 10 more sales using video case stories in the next 90 days. And we go deeper into why video case stories are important. And there'll be a link to get the book for really cheap too. So the book, like I said, explains, like my 1-star review on Amazon is like, hey, this is work. I'm like, yes, it is work.
This is work.
Yeah. Like someone's, because most people are used to, I'm not going to call anyone out, but they go, oh, you can sell $100 million. All you have to do is this little book worth of stuff to sell $100 million. I'm like, all right. Whereas this is like, hey, this is the starting point, and these are the things you need to do to get started, but the exact things you need to do to get started. This is exactly how we do it. And if you want our help doing it, if you want to use the tackle box as your foot in the door, become authorized, call me up. I'll help you out with that too.
I want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing this. I've learned a lot from you throughout the years on a variety of topics and resources. I want to point people to check out, they can go to videocasestory.com to learn more. They can go to testimonialbook.com. Obviously, I got your book on Audible, so you can go to any place to get it. And also, obviously, if you want those resources we talked about, just go to videocasestory.com/rise, and those will be there. Any other things, any other places I missed on that?
I mean, get the videocasestory.com/rise, get the foot in the door grader, get the 10 ways. And from there, we'll send you links to the rest of the stuff. But those 2 tools can transform your sales. Whether you're an agency, you're a lawyer, if you're doing consultative sales, this is the best thing I've ever found.
I want to just show one quick thing before we end. We do have, obviously, testimonial book. We do have videocasestory.com. And most importantly, we have Tales of Bill Brasky.
You looked it up.
Which is Holiday Inn. There's another one that's Brasky's Buddies at Chuck E. Cheese. So I actually had the founder of Chuck E. Cheese on my podcast, Nolan Bushnell, who is Steve Jobs' mentor. And he's also the founder of Atari. So that is an awesome episode to check out. as well. So
I can't
So
wait to check it out.
there you go. Videocasestory.com, more episodes of the podcast. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.